faculty member, staff, and part of the broader Chattanooga community, we're thrilled to have you join us for what promises to be an interesting and engaging conversation. As we begin, I would like to have a special thanks to our athletics department, in particular Andrew. Andrew, are you here? Sorry. Andrew, where Andrew has generously provided door prizes on the table today, including women's basketball tickets, a jersey, a football, and we really appreciate his support and the support of the athletics department for hosting us this afternoon. Sports are more than just games. They are powerful economic engines that shape communities, influence markets, and inspire millions. And today we have an opportunity to explore the business side of sports with an exceptional panel of experts. We're honored to welcome UT System President Randy Boyd, Dr. Brad R. Humphreys, and Jay Greason to campus. Thank you for sharing your time with us today and your expertise. Your insights will undoubtedly spark some robust conversation. And it's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Claudia Kramer, the Probasco Distinguished Chair of Free Enterprise, Professor of Economics in the Gary W. Rollins College of Business at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. Dr. Kramer's main research interests lie in the intersection of applied economic development and political economy. She has authored more than 50 articles in reputable journals. She has co-edited 2 books, written book reviews, and policy briefs. Her research has also appeared in popular press outlets such as The Economist and the BBC. She currently serves as an editor for Public Choice in the Journal of Institutional Economics, is on the Board of Trustees for the Southern Economics Association, and on the Board of Fellows for the Institute of American Civics at the University of Tennessee. She is a native of West Virginia. She earned her BBA in economics from Marshall University with the University Honors. She completed her PhD in economics at West Virginia University. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kramer.
And thank you all for coming. We have an oversold out crowd. We do not anticipate the interest and willingness for y'all to come out and talk about economics, because clearly you're here to talk about economics. Economics is a way of thinking, and it's about problem solving. And so economists apply the economic way of thinking to anything and everything, including sports. So sports economists take the core economic principles. The people respond to incentives. The rules of the game are going to alter those incentives. That people are rationally self-interested. Every decision has a cost, and that rational decisions include cost-benefit analysis, and apply this framework to analyze the business side of college and professional sports, how rule changes affect the game, the public funding of stadiums, player contracts, ticket pricing, even gambling, for example. So the economic way of thinking allows us to see sports not just as entertainment, but as a competitive, complex market to be studied and understood. Part of the mission of the Probasco Chair is to illustrate the power of the economic way of thinking and the benefits of markets outside the classroom and inside the classroom, and connect UTC to the Chattanooga community. I can't think of a better way of doing that than through sports. In just a few moments, we will hear from our esteemed panelists and have Q&A from the audience. So one note about Q&A is that you should have received a program and you have a QR code, and you're going to submit your questions through the QR code. Economists can't resist increasing efficiency, and so to me that increases the efficiency. We don't have to walk around with mics. And so if you are struggling to do that, we do have at every table, or almost every table, a Phillips Scholar who will be able to assist in getting your questions out there. One of our UTC undergraduate economics majors, Thaddeus Weiss, he's going to serve as the press in delivering all of the questions to our esteemed panelists. Jay Greason is going to moderate our panel with Dr. Brad Humphreys and President Boyd. Randy Boyd is president of the University of Tennessee System and founder of Radio Systems Corporation, Boyd Sports, and Tennessee Achieves. A South Knoxville native, he graduated from UT at 19 with honors in industrial management, becoming the first in his family to earn a degree. At 23, he launched his first business, which grew into a global enterprise, selling over 4,000 pet products, including Invisible Fence. With nearly 500 million in annual sales across 60 countries, an avid baseball fan, Randy Boyd owns Boyd Sports, which operates 5 teams including the Tennessee Smokies and 4 summer collegiate teams. Our other panelist is Dr. Brad Humphreys. Dr. Humphreys is a native West Virginian and a WVU alumnus. He holds dual BS degrees in business administration and economics from WVU and an MA and a PhD in economics from Johns Hopkins University. He is a professor of economics in the John Chambers College of Business and Economics at WVU. Brad's research on economics of professional sports and gambling has been featured in over 100 peer-reviewed journal articles. He is also the co-editor of The Business of Sport, a comprehensive 3-volume work on sports, business, economics, and finance. Jay Greason is a sports writer and columnist at the Chattanooga Times Free Press and writes a daily online column called 5 at 10. He started with the newspaper in May of 2002 as the deputy sports editor. Born and raised in Georgia, Jay is a graduate of Auburn University and began his newspaper career in 1997 with the Noonan Times Herald. Stops in Clayton and Henry counties in Georgia and 2 years as sports editor at the Marietta Daily Journal preceded Jay's move to Chattanooga. Jay is a local, state, regional, and national award winner as a writer, designer, and section editor. Let's welcome our distinguished panelists and begin what promises to be a fun discussion.
All right, for those of you who know me, this is going to be a strange question, but can everybody hear me? All right, I gotta tell you, I feel a little intimidated here. I got the president on one side and the doctor on the other side, and I'm the guy who started in Noonan. So we're going to do the best we can to try to cover as many topics as possible. Tell me about it. Sports has always been a business, right? I mean, today is the anniversary. In 1958, Ted Williams signed what at that point in time was the most expensive contract in baseball history at $135,000 a year. Juan Soto will get paid over the next 15 years $315,000 a game. So sports has always been a business, but now we are interested because sports is this big of a business, right? So I will, and before we get to the conversations of the experts, clearly the business side of this leaves a little bit to be desired for me because I work for a newspaper after all. I want to thank the Probasco chair, and I believe William Probasco, Scotty's grandson, is in the audience. Don't stand up. I just want to thank you for what your family has meant to our community and the sports community in our town. Y'all are a wonderful contribution to Chattanooga now and forever. So with that, we will move forward to a place that I think is near and dear to everyone's heart and we'll start with President Boyd in this sentence because of the perspective of sports. The University of Tennessee system has a budget of $3.2 billion annually. Less than 10% of that is dedicated to athletics across the 5 UT locales. But President Boyd, if I asked you, if you go to the drugstore, if you go to church, if you go to your morning breakfast place, if you spend less than 10% of your budget on sports, what's the percentage of questions you get about athletics?
So you guys know this was a setup, we didn't talk about this earlier, and the answer is about roughly 80%. I can tell you I don't actually did a ranking on my performance from the public, but if I did, when we lost Georgia State and BYU in Knoxville in my first year, it would probably be like a 0. I mean, I literally walked, this is a really anecdote, walking down the street from K Street in Knoxville, Tennessee, and some guy ran across the street, 2 lanes of traffic, come over and pointed his finger in my face and said, "This university is falling apart." We had record enrollment, record retention, from an academic and a financial point of view, everything was going fantastic. When because we lost 2 games, this place was falling apart. Once we beat Alabama, people that I've never met before, well, you're doing such a great job at UT. Was it because of, it's all about the perception of how our sports teams do on Saturday.
Well, in that conversation, to you, Dr. Humphreys, it is going to be, we're in arguably the greatest unknown period of college sports, even more so than the advent of Title IX in the early 70s, even more than eligibility of freshmen. But the name, image, and likeness decisions of the day, of yesterday, and certainly of tomorrow lead us to a place of perpetual unknown.
Yeah, absolutely. As somebody who has done research in the economics of intercollegiate athletics for 25 years, I find this point in time to just be unprecedented in terms of the economics of what's going on. I mean, the NCAA invented the term student athlete and has fought tooth and nail against any sort of compensation for the athletes that are the source of the NCAA's revenues. And now they have just sort of thrown up their hands and said, we're just going to let a free market emerge here that's going to compensate college athletes. It's unprecedented. And despite being a regulatory body, the NCAA has decided not to regulate or do anything about name, image, and likeness money in that market. And now, if you haven't quite kept up with events which change almost daily, there will likely be a settlement in a court suit that will generate what they're calling revenue sharing, which is really just compensation for college athletes. They will, in some way, shape, or form, who knows how, become university employees, just like me. If you would have told me 5 years ago that this revolution would have taken place in college sports, I would have laughed you out of my office, because I would not have forecast that these sort of sweeping changes would occur in the economics of college sports. And I tell you what, it's still unclear where this is going to end up.
To that point, President Boyd, as someone who leads a university with an athletic program like UT, who is trying to figure out ways it's going to compete against the Alabamas, Ohio States, and whatever else, and then an athletic program like all the folks here support, like UTC, and how they're going to survive all of these unknowns. The unknowns may be as big a hurdle as the financial constraints. Is that fair?
It is. First off, I want to make a confession. I don't know if any of you have ever had this experience. Maybe you dreamed about this, or you actually had it when you were a student. When you prepared for a particular test about a particular subject, you walk in and you read the wrong chapter. So my understanding was we were talking about baseball, and mine would be baseball. I'm told, my great kid Mike told me, you were a politician once, just answer the question that you really wish to ask. Hopefully somebody will go back to baseball. So there are people in our system like Andy White, like our athletic directors, Mark Gordon. They can talk more about this subject, much more authoritative than me. But like every other thing, I've got opinions. So I could share with you some of them. Question though, I'm wondering how many of you have heard of the House settlement? Brad just mentioned it. Just raise a hand, how many have heard of the House settlement? So maybe 8%, 10% of the room. So if you're in my world, we talk about it every day. My general counsel at the University of Tennessee system said, I just did a review last week, he said last year he spent 50% of his time on the House settlement. This is a really big deal. NIL is kind of part of the overall mix, but the House settlement is what Brad referenced, a settlement between the NCAA and the 5 major power conferences to agree on compensation for some past athletes and athletes going forward. It's a multi-billion-dollar settlement. I can't speak for everybody. I believe that everybody that's signing on believes it's a flawed deal. It's not solving anything. What we're doing is saying that the NCAA will pay, I forget the exact number, roughly somebody quote me, or good research, about roughly $3 billion in past payments back to former athletes, and then going forward, the universities are going to have to be paying the future athletes. We agreed, this is in the settlement, agreed that the universities would pay 22% of the revenue to the athletes. Here's the problem, two big problems. One, we're talking about paying the revenues to the athletes that are generating the revenue, which are mostly male football and male basketball. It totally ignores Title IX. Right now, we have laws that say that we have to treat our female and male athletes the same. There's a whole other host of attorneys already lining up, and that's public. A whole other host of attorneys all lining up, waiting to sue after this suit happens. And then they also, the big part about the suit in the first place was that we're not compensating athletes fairly. So who's negotiating for the athletes? We've got some attorneys, we've got NCAA, we've got the conferences. There's no student athletes sitting at the table. And so until we have collective bargaining, until student athletes can actually be at the table and negotiate for themselves, it's going to be flawed. NIL is a part of it, but just only a small part. NIL provides them the ability, provide them the ability to do licensing of events in a likeness. So that's fair. We should be able to do that. It's become kind of corrupted in that a lot of people are donating to organizations that are saying it's NIL, but it's really just straight compensation. One of my board members, I won't mention the name, says it's just intellectually dishonest. Everybody knows that it's not what we're saying it is, but we're pretending that it is. And so we've got some fundamental things that we have to change going forward. Actually, it's a long rant.
No, and they get the microphones because they're more important to me, but I've also got a loud voice. You may have read the wrong chapter, but you just got an A on the test. So, to that end, I mean, if we're talking, because he mentioned a couple of things that I want to make certain we cover. The unknown of Title IX in regards to revenue sharing, NIL, all of the paying college athletes, and not only just Title IX, but the revenue generating sports against the revenue subsidized sports. Those are things you've studied, right, Doctor?
Absolutely, yeah. So I've studied Title IX, I've written some papers about Title IX, but I want to just first address this sort of overview of the economics of big-time college sports. Many people have the perception that big-time sports, I'm talking about the Power 5 from Tennessee, right, Georgia, Florida, that big-time, Auburn, sorry, Auburn, or even. People have the perception that those athletic programs generate substantial economic returns. That is, that the revenues that they generate is far in excess of what it costs to operate those programs. That is, in fact, not the case. And there are only about 5 or 6 athletic departments in the country that consistently operate where their revenues exceed their costs. So that means that most intercollegiate athletic programs operate off of subsidies that are coming from central administration, that are coming from donations from alumni, from all of the revenue sources, because the direct revenues they're generating from broadcasts and attendance at games is not enough to cover the overall cost. So, and then you layer on the number that's being tossed around right now for the revenue sharing at the Power 5 conferences would be $20 million per year compensation that would be going directly to athletes. That's above and beyond what the current obligations in terms of spending are for Power 5 conferences. So that's going to put severe budget pressures on athletic departments in order to be able to come up with that money, because most of them operating in at a break-even situation or even in a what we call money-losing situation in terms of the economics there. So and then Title IX, which legislates equal opportunity in education for men and women, which has been interpreted in the college sports context as having the same number or proportionate number of male and female athletes in those athletic programs, many of those women's athletic programs are not generating very much in the way of revenues. And so, I mean, the whole economics of figuring out what the distribution of that $20 million per year is going to be across sports is a big unknown. And, you know, labor markets sort this out in many other situations, but other labor markets don't have the same constraints on that intercollegiate athletics does. So I think that the uncertainty there is just enormous. And where that's going to wind up, I'm not even going to guess.
Well, I have a whole lot of things to say. President Boyd.
One of the things we could continue talking about, but just a few quick comments. One, and the most important thing is, go Mocs. I don't get that out after a big start. There's a brave new world out there. We're not sure how athletics is going to shake out from the business side, but what I believe is that our Power 5 teams are going to be fine. I look at UT and UT Knoxville and Alabama. There's so much revenue, so much fan support. We're going to be fine. As the president of the University of Tennessee system, where I spend my time worrying is about UT Chattanooga and UT Martin and some of our other smaller teams. So that's where I think the biggest concern is in the future of athletics. And Kurt and I have talked. We're going to be continuing to look for ways to help our other campuses do or thrive for this future world as well. This one also wanted, maybe I got this out earlier, but Jay made a comment that sports is all sports is a business. I just make it different. I would say there's a lot of sports that is a business. I'm a marathon runner, it's not a business. There's millions of people that participate in Little League sports. So I think sport is something that's pure and beneficial. Oh, brother, beyond just, there's a portion, but it's probably the part, I don't know this, I'm not going to make up the stat. That we have an economist that can come and help correct me later. But I think that the professional part of sports, in all sports, is probably less than 1%. There are a lot of people that just love the games that they play and benefit from it. So I just don't want to say all sport is a business, but it is a big part of it. The last time I just wanted, this is something, Jay, I was just thinking about this the other day when I was looking at the budgets of some of our campuses and break-even nature of sports. And if you think about it, athletic department isn't a business. It is, but it isn't in the fact that it doesn't have shareholders. So if you're a business, you want to make a profit and you want to return your profits back to your shareholders. The only shareholders in this enterprise is your fans and your athletes. And so what you do is, whatever extra money that you think you might have, you put it back into fan amenities, or you don't raise ticket prices as much as you might. So you're actually in the business of sports and collegiate sports. Your goal is to find an equilibrium. So it's not really, as a business person entering this, wait a second, we got a $234 million business at UT Knoxville. Why are we making more profit? But then I realized, well, we're not supposed to make profit. We're supposed to, if we had a little extra margin, we should give it back to the fans.
All right. I'm supposed to be the point guard, but
We can talk baseball.
we'll talk baseball in a second. But you said not all sports are a business. How much do you spend a year being a marathon?
It's not a business for me.
No, it isn't. Can you say, well, you say youth sports is not a business. Dear Lord, raise your hand if you have a youth sports athlete and say it's not a business. Holy buckets. I got a travel softball player at home, and I'm going to have to take a second job. I mean, now, I get it. You're right, and this is about the NIL conversation. And before we get to minor league baseball, because that not only impacts President Boyd, it also impacts a whole bunch of what we all care about here in Chattanooga. Last thought on NIL.
Yeah, it's the wild, wild west. Who knows what's going to happen? It won't, but whatever it looks like when this all shakes out is going to look like nothing like the college athletics landscape that we've been used to for our entire lives.
And President Boyd, your last thought for the multitude of UTC fans who are worried about the future of NIL within the sound of your voice.
I think there are going to be different organizations within collegiate sports, and I think there'll be something that looks more traditional, and then you'll have some new super league. It may be not in all sports, but most likely in football and potentially in basketball. But most likely football. I'm going to throw out a solution. It's actually been discussed publicly by others, but I don't think loudly enough. So here's just a thought. This isn't as president of the University of Tennessee sports fan looking at. I say that it's really hard to actually. People tell me you can't do that. But so hopefully it doesn't vote as the president of the University of Tennessee. I probably will. I'm too far into this now, so I'm going to start with the cover sheet or something to say and realize this is probably going to be a mistake. But I'm going to do it anyway. A solution to our problem with collegiate, the big Power 5 sport in football, is that universities don't want to pay athletes, and if we do, it brings in all kinds of other laws and restrictions around what you can do with employees at a university, including Title IX. A consideration, and people talk about this, is creating separate entities that would house your football team. So imagine you created a nonprofit or for-profit, let's say a nonprofit LLC, that own the rights for the team. They would license the name, they would lease all facilities, and they could only hire students from the university. So it's an independent organization, but it has all of your university's employees. And then there's no Title IX. They could actually have collective bargaining. But it could be more what it truthfully is. I think everything that we do outside of that is pretending. This is actually creating an organization that actually represents what we're really at. Very radical. Everybody that is a stakeholder in the existing structure would oppose it because they can lose. And so it's something that I think is going to have some outside force bring to the market. So I don't think we can do that internally. But I really believe there has to be something transformational. I don't know if that's exactly the right idea, but I think it has to be something transformational. The House settlement isn't going to do it, and the way we're trying to keep modifying NIL every 6 months isn't going to do it. We're going to have to do something different.
No, I completely agree. I really do. I completely agree that what we're lamenting right now, my wife has a great phrase, is don't borrow trouble, because there's so many unknowns. Now that said, I'm really looking forward to the pilot flying J balls in the very near future. So we can all figure out that way out. But we do have, while college sports in the unknown future plays a great deal into the concerns, livelihoods of a whole lot of people in this room, we also have a great opportunity for a guy who has researched a whole bunch of the examples of cities, counties, building stadiums, and a guy who is experienced and has great hopes for the greatness of the community, to the communities of what minor league baseball stadiums could be, and even the subsidies to stadiums. I start with you. When does your Smoky Stadium open in Knoxville? And you mentioned to me that it's going to be the nicest minor league baseball stadium in the country until the Lookout Stadium opens.
This is a true statement. So I got here about 30 minutes early so I could go visit with Jason Fryer and see what he's doing with the Chattanooga Lookouts. And I like Jason. He's one of the smartest people in baseball. You're fortunate to have him as one of your owners. I know there's other people in the room that I can see that are also owners as well. So thank you for supporting minor league baseball in this community. Anyway, so I like Jason. I was really, on the one hand, really happy to see what incredible facility that is going to be built here. It's really spectacular. On the other hand, I was a little annoyed because it may be better than the one that I'm just getting ready to open April 15th. So I believe when we open our stadium April 15th in Knoxville, it will be the nicest minor league baseball stadium in the country until Chattanooga preserves in 2026. But we'll enjoy the being the reigning champion for a year. But we're opening April 15th, and there's still tickets available.
To that point, and all right, I'm trying to be a point guard, even though I'm opinionated, but I'm also going to be the referee here because I wore a striped suit. You are not for communities subsidizing stadiums, correct?
My opinion there is a little bit more nuanced than that.
Okay.
Let me just first provide one caveat. Much of my research focuses, in fact, exclusively on professional sports at the highest level, and on the economics and financing of, NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB stadiums, and not minor league. But, we, in the United States, we heavily subsidize the construction of professional sports venues for an activity, an economic activity, which is private enterprise. To give some international perspective, that doesn't take place almost anywhere else in the world. In the big soccer leagues in Europe, those teams don't go to stadiums and pay them. But the United States is unique in that way. Now, I've done a lot of research on what the underlying economic impact is of a professional sports team in the city. And my professional opinion there is, I'm not against subsidies. I think there is some amount of public subsidy that would be justified for the construction of a sports facility because it does generate intangible benefits in the local economy. And it does concentrate economic activity in one place in the local economy on game day. But I think that the level of subsidies which we provide in the United States on average is well above what one could justify in a cost-benefit sense be provided for, again, what is at its heart private activity, business activity. So, yeah, I do not blanket say every dollar of subsidization that goes to a professional sports facility is unjustified. But I just think we subsidize too much, especially in cities that face all sorts of budgetary pressures on them in things that are not related to sports. So I can't address directly minor league baseball. I will say that in my opinion, the deal that the Tennessee Titans got for their new stadium is probably one of the worst deals for taxpayers that has ever occurred in the history of professional sports in the United States, which goes back to 1876. And those are the subsidies that I don't think can be economically justified.
Brad, surprisingly, we agree wholeheartedly. One thing that I discovered when I was figuring out how we were going to finance our stadium in Knoxville was, as we looked at other stadiums across the country, other minor league stadiums, and how they were financed, if you see one deal, you see one deal. Every deal is different. So listen, I'm hopeful when you're talking about this in the future, maybe say, let me give you an example of a really good deal. Let me describe to you what I think was a really good deal for the people of my community. So I donated $10 million worth of land to the city. So they got the land free of charge. The city created something called a sports authority, which then borrowed $65 million. So the taxpayers didn't put any money in, they created a note. Going forward, I'll be paying them $1 million a year in lease. So every year, they're actually making a profit on the lease. We asked the state for a waiver of the property taxes that would incur around the area for a 20-year period. The state said, no, we don't want to do that. Why don't we just do the net present value of what we think it might be? We'll just give you that. Pretty reasonable way for them to do that in some way. I actually loaned the city an additional $20 million to make sure that it got done. The only way I get paid back is through the TIP district. So if it increases the taxes, I'll get paid back. If this turns out to be a bust and nobody else develops in this area, I don't get my money back. So I'm thinking the taxpayers in Knox County, that by the end of the 30-year lease, the stadium is totally theirs. So the stadium is owned by the community, and I'm covering all the costs and all the risk. What's good for the city, though, is this. So we did this project. We've got a $120 million stadium. There's roughly $200 million worth of condominiums and apartments that were built simultaneously. So you've already got like a $300 million economic impact. It's not public, but I know of at least 6 projects, and there's a lot of projects that I don't know about. But I know of at least 6 projects that are being planned now within a 3 or 4 block radius of the stadium that will equal another $700 million in investment. So in the first 5 years, we expect about $1 billion investment in the community. I'm not sure I haven't calculated what the tax back to the community is, but it'll be significant. So I agree. I'm not going to mention any particular projects. I agree that there are projects around the country that probably aren't in the taxpayers' best interest. I think there are probably some, like ours, that probably are. So it's mixed.
I appreciate that, and I'll assure you that the next time I'm asked, can you point to a deal that is good for taxpayers, that'll be what I'm talking about.
Well, another one it happened in, right around Atlanta, true. I mean, that has been tried out, even with a capsized turn field after like 20 years. To that point, after a very well said thing, if you and I go to lunch, you are getting a check.
That may be money.
Are you kidding me? You spent $20 million on some sort of restaurant bleacher. All right, fine. You've invested it. Then fine. I'll get the cheese sticks. You get the lunch. To that end, I know, President Boyd, you've been amazingly gracious, but we're talking about facility construction. We're talking about, honestly, maybe a bona fide next generation kind of star program. But what can you say about the Balls baseball stadium, and what does that mean for all of the construction projects, for all of the schools and athletic teams in the UT system? Because I know you're excited about baseball opening up every state.
Yeah, no, part So we look at each project on its own, and it's got to generate its own revenue. So the baseball stadium, Danny's White's team did the math and calculated how they would be able to pay for that, and there was a very conservative budget. They've already happen to know they're already well ahead of that. So that project is a standalone project. Unfortunately, it doesn't really benefit UT Southern or UT Chattanooga, UT Northern in that sense. Our athletic teams and departments work primarily, within the campus.
Well, and to that end, let's go back to the thing, because we're about to run out of time before we turn it open to the Q&A. One of my biggest questions, just for you, and this is not policy, not anything else, would you prefer the NIL money is managed from the school, or would you prefer that is managed from a third-party entity?
So I think sometimes we conflate NIL with compensation for students.
Right.
If we're talking truly about licensing your name, image, and likeness as it should be, that should be something that the students do. The school wants to license their name. It should be an independent enterprise and exercise. So I would not want the university to be involved in that. It could be, but it seems like in NFL sports and other professional sports, the Tennessee Titans don't control the licensing, except they do in the team sports. They don't control the licensing. The Players Association do.
Well, yeah, which gets back to your comment that there are no athletes at the table, so we don't know the long-term answer to that.
Yeah, actually, maybe my best answer to your question is we should ask the athletes.
You got any college athletes? What do you think? Stand up, speak your mind.
It kind of just depends on how you do like the collectives and stuff. Because like you were saying, it's not it's more pay for play now. Some of those big schools like Knoxville, you've got private collectives that just kind of get money from donors and they just pass it out and candy to everybody. So it kind of just depends if you're talking about.
Can I ask you a question? Are you in the EA college football sports game?
I'm not. It's Chattanooga in the FCS, but my little brother plays at UT Knoxville, so he is. Yeah.
What check did he get from the EA Sports college football game?
I'm not sure of the exact number, but I think it was a little bit over 500.
I appreciate your time and thank you for coming. I'm sorry, HDA. What did you? Did you have a response to that before we open up the question?
I just, I think that I agree wholeheartedly with what you're talking about in terms of the athletes should be playing a bigger role than they are right now. I just want to point out one of the interesting economic problems that's keeping, I think, athletes from participating. That is, if we're going to treat college athletes as employers at the university, they're public employers, and that means that they are subject to the labor law in place in each state in the country, and those are all different. And that's going to be a major impediment to collective bargaining
If they're public employees.
if they're public employees.
Back to the LLC.
Back to your LLC point, which I think, I want to respond to is, I think that's what's going to happen. And I think that's the most reasonable economic approach to dealing with this. Now, I think it's only going to be football. I think because if you look at the economics of how the NCAA operates and where it gets its money from, the March Madness contract is almost the sole source of NCAA revenues. And I think they're going to be very reluctant to get rid of the men's basketball tournament revenues that really funds that entire operation. The NCAA makes nothing basically off of college football, except for FCS, right? Because that all goes to the conferences through the broadcast rights contracts, and even the college football playoff is not part of the NCAA, and they don't make any money on it. So March Madness is something that I think they will have to drag the NCAA kicking and screaming out of if you're going to change that. But football, it's going to be different. Yeah, there's going to be a Super Bowl. You're right.
And before we turn it over to you guys, I just want to thank you, President Boyd.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Humphreys. And dear Lord, I pride myself on being the smartest guy in the room, and I'm the dumbest guy in the panel. Daddy.
All right, so as I mentioned earlier, that the Q&A is going to be done through your QR code, so if you have not submitted your questions, right now is the time. As I'll just make a couple announcements as we transition. You do have those tickets, hold on to them, your red tickets. We're going to do some giveaways at the end, including at the table you also have tickets for tonight's women's basketball game. So if you can attend, please take tickets. They are on the Probasco chair. It is National Women in Sports Day, and it is a blackout, so wear black. And also at the very end, which we'll come back up and do our raffle, but everything on the table are giveaways as well. So just anything at the table, the notebooks, the centerpieces, pens, please take with you. All right, so Thaddeus, you're up and you are ready to go? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the first question we've got, it looks like it was addressed to President Boyd, but everybody is welcome to answer. So we've seen how successful programs such as Tennessee Achieves can help students have greatly improved access to higher education. How can sports initiatives such as your multi-use stadium in downtown Knoxville be a part of creating new pathways for students to engage with and pursue careers in athletics and sport management?
Oh, interesting, great question. So one of the things that all community or minor league baseball teams do is spend a lot of time working with the community. And we have a lot of plans already to reach out to our community and involve youth. With regards to Tennessee Achieves, those students can have a new community service. There maybe is something there's not an angle that I thought about, but the big part about it, I think a community ballpark, like what we have in a minor league stadium in particular, is that it becomes a part of the community. It's a place where it brings people together. And it's been a big part of that is bringing the youth into the stadium and having them be a part. And if you don't know this about our stadium, we have a very thriving downtown, and then we have a very neglected, underinvested in east part of our city. And our stadium is right in between the two. And so our goal is for it to be a bridge to East Knoxville and help them have more opportunity and hopefully be a catalyst for growth in that part of our county. Reaching out to the youth is a part of that.
That's wonderful, that's really great. So the next question we have is addressed to Dr. Brad Humphreys, but everybody's welcome to answer. So how do professional sports franchises influence local labor markets, and are there lasting benefits beyond construction and event-related jobs?
Well, first, the construction of a new sports facility is not, it can't economically be called a benefit. We call that a cost. And calling those things benefits is intellectually dishonest, obviously. So what does a professional sports team do in the local economy? I've spent 25 years working on research related to that. A professional sports team is really good at concentrating economic activity in one place, that is in and around the stadium at one time on game day. But it's very important to recognize when we're thinking about what the long-term impact of that concentration of economic activity is, that most of that economic activity is coming from local residents. There's not a tremendous amount, there's evidence that there's not a tremendous amount of travel in the professional sporting activities. So even though there's a lot of spending going on, I've been to professional sports events, I know that. But that represents spending which would have taken place somewhere else in that city at some other time. So that's not actual new economic benefit. It's just moving consumer activity around. The evidence, 20, 30, 40 years of evidence is completely consistent with that idea. So, I mean, if you would like to revitalize a neighborhood, if you'd like to move your consumer spending around your city, that's a really good way to do it. But it's hard to justify, to a business owner somewhere outside of the area around the stadium who loses customers because now they're going to a bar or a restaurant down next to the NBA arena. How are you going to tell that person this is a good public policy when that business person is losing money? So when evaluating, I think that's the most important concept to understand when evaluating what the long-term impact is. I've written a paper that shows that, yeah, wages in cities and businesses near professional sports facilities in bars and restaurants go up, right? But again, there's probably less tip revenue for a waitress in some bar or restaurant in some other part of the city who's actually losing money because of that. And that is the basic story, the economics of how that works.
But to that point, the NFL is a different outlet. The NFL is a mushroom cloud that you get a Super Bowl, you get the draft, you get billions of dollars in revenue. The NFL is
there's no evidence that hosting the Super Bowl has ever had any significant impact on the economy of the city. Cities' economies are huge and diverse. And you're talking about 1 weekend of a year. I wrote a paper on this 20 years ago. There is where I showed that there's no evidence that of long-term growth or even a one-time blip in local earnings or employment in cities that hosted Super Bowls compared to cities that didn't. Cities are already major tourist destinations anyway. What you had is certainly a lot of people coming into a capital city to visit, but they're just crowding out some other people who would have visited that city that same weekend at the Super Bowl. Nashville is a tourist destination. People are going to go there. But
Right, there's two outliers. I'm disagreeing with you. Say, by the way, I don't know if you noticed, I just noticed this. I was thinking I need to turn Jay's volume down. He doesn't have a microphone. Exactly as you said you would.
I've heard that before.
One thing to note, so Neyland Stadium is getting over $300 million upgrade. It's all being paid for by the university. No taxpayer dollars, no state dollars is going to it. Sometimes, our athletic department, why is Memphis and Nashville getting huge investments in a public stadium and we're not getting any? I don't know the answer to that, but we are paying for our stadium ourselves through the revenue we generate. And 3 years ago, a stat that I heard was that each game day in Knoxville generates $100 million of economic impact. We were looking at this during COVID. We've been thinking about the negative impact that not having a game would have on the community. So $100 million in economic impact. If you've been to a game, there's people from all over the state and all over the country that come to them. So at least in that example, it may not be typical of all stadiums and all games across the country, but at Neyland Stadium, we're bringing people from all over. It's not costing the taxpayers a penny, and it's generating $100 million worth of economic impact. And the second, I just want to mention something that Jay said, or Gordon said about a game is only however many times you play a football game, it's 10 games a season, maybe a baseball team, it may be 70. But what we're creating in Knoxville, I know what you're creating in Chattanooga, because the person that we emulated our stadium from was Jason Pryor here, was to create a multi-sport entertainment facility. So in Fort Wayne, where Jason has another stadium, they have 750 events a year. They have farmers markets, they have weddings, they have events, they have soccer. At our stadium, we've already got a soccer team that'll be playing 20 games a year. So I guess another opportunity, if someone's thinking about the economics of sport and economics of investing in the stadium, is to make sure you leverage it. You hate to have this huge facility and only use it 10 times a year.
Are you saying there's going to be a soccer team playing in the new stadium?
Oh, here?
Yeah.
No, I don't know that. In Knoxville, they're playing. We got the one Knox soccer team will be playing in our stadium.
I just want to make certain, because
I
believe that could possibly
Randy,
happen.
that's a great point that you made, and I just like to follow up a little bit. The economics of football stadiums for colleges and the pros are completely different, which gives us some interesting insight into what's going on in these pro stadiums. So, for example, how old is Nolan Stadium?
Anybody know?
Anybody know?
Said I don't know the answer. I think it's like 90-something years?
So-
1924, yeah, I think.
So, when's the last time you heard somebody say, wow, that stadium is so old, it's outdated, it needs to be replaced?
Yeah, but it's been renovated. To be fair, though, it's been renovated countless times.
But that's right, and that's the point I'm making here. College stadiums are renovated. Pro stadiums are knocked down and replaced with new facilities. And that is because the underlying economics there are so different, and I'll tell you why it is. A college team can't credibly threaten to leave. A pro does not.
Good observation.
All right, this doesn't happen a whole lot unless my wife's in the room, but I am now left speechless to point to Dr. Humphrey. Stop it! Come on now, y'all are on my side. I'm the lovable one.
That is good. Any more questions?
Yeah, so we've had a couple come through that are kind of concerned with the gap, the disparities between pro and college sports. You know, the gap is becoming smaller, the amount of differences. And we've had a couple questions that are concerned with how student athletes will be treated as they may become university employees, as Dr. Humphrey was saying. So I guess what people in the crowd really want to know is, do you see athletes moving towards situations where they'll be signing multi-year contracts with buyouts and potentially things like that? And could that lead to them being treated as, you know, athletes of pro franchises potentially being traded to other universities and things like that?
That is a good question.
Yeah, that's a great question in the sense that it's now becoming the buzz conversation online on whether Auburn's going to trade their running back to Tennessee for a quarterback. I mean, but if they want to be professionals, then why is that not the case? So, I mean, we got a whole bunch of questions building up, and I know we got a whole lot to get to.
I just said, I think your scenario would be impossible under the current structure. Yes. You can't trade students from one school to the other. That's not possible. And for the students to benefit, they can't benefit in this current structure. So there's going to have to be a different structure.
Yeah.
But we're going to hold the students to a higher microscope. The Ohio State defensive coordinator was making almost $3 million. He left to go to Penn State on his own accord, and Penn State paid his buyout and to make more money. Because here's the hypocrisy: not only about the NCAA and their indifference to where this thing has come, the coaches are happy to hop to the next job and then lament to the players about where's your school loyalty. So, hey, cry me a cup of milk, brother.
Yeah, I think, again, there's just a tremendous amount of uncertainty about what the future is going to look like. But I think, I mean, at the top level in Power 5 schools, we're going to see what are effectively professional athletes. That is in the cards, and that's why I think Randy's idea is really useful for thinking about what college football is going to look like. Trades, yeah. So, I mean, trades in professional sports are, I harp on this in my sports econ class all the time. The teams are trading contracts and not players, right? Because I find that that's what means players. It's the contracts that are being traded. And
To that point, though, we had an NBA player just this week going into the NBA trade deadline saying the trade deadline is modern day slavery. I mean, think about if you were working for EPB or TVA or the Times Free Press and somebody wanted to trade for you and say, all right, we're going to Wichita. The word slavery takes everything out of the equation. It devalues all of his message. But none of us came out of school and got drafted. None of us have been traded. And again, none of us are, well, except for you, Mr. Griscom, are making 7 figures. So, I get all of the balances, but the conversation is fair to have.
This is the interesting point, sports economics point I want to make. Economists have argued that the entry drafts that we have in every league in North America are terrible for players. And interestingly enough, not a single major professional soccer league in Europe conducts a draft. There is a free labor market in which players are free to sign with whatever team they want to sign, right? And there is clear research that conducting these drafts reduces the salaries of professional athletes. And I'll also point out that the major women's soccer league has just done away with their entry draft and moved to a model like the European leagues, where college.
To that point, could college football draft? In the NIL world, could college football draft?
I don't know what the NIL world is.
Well, whatever the future you think NIL is, because you were brilliant in your discussion of that in the conversation, but if we're going to treat everybody equally, can we draft recruit?
No, the answer is no. Because drafts can only exist because of the collective bargaining process between players and unions.
But can the United Auto Workers draft?
No, it's
Well,
restrained
but
trade.
that's
It's restrained
collective
trade.
bargaining.
Yeah, but it's restrained trade. But the draft is in the CBA between the NFLPA and the league.
Okay.
If it was not, then that would be restrained trade and they'd be sued instantly under NFLPA.
First off, you have to have collective bargaining. We're going to say this, anything less than collective bargaining is going to always be dishonest. So I take a look at today. If you have that, though, you have the independent, if you have the scenario which I described, and again, there could be dozens of different scenarios, but if you had the scenario which I described, the teams, the independent team would have to only employ students at that university. So the students are making the choice which university they want to go to first. So you can't really, you're not drafting them to play for a team. They have to actually choose the school. So the school will take priority.
So we've got a couple people that are concerned as the landscape changes, that some colleges, especially smaller programs, may see some bigger risks within their sports departments. So I've got a couple of questions about that. As sports betting becomes more popular and the market becomes pretty substantial, what are the risks and opportunities that may be faced by some university athletic programs? And I also wanted to...
Let's take that.
Yeah, but just a little one at a time.
So, sports betting and the legalization of sports betting and its now ubiquitous presence on your phone, on the phone of everybody, I think is one of the biggest threats to sports fans that there currently is in today's environment. And that's because of match fixing. I mean, the way in which players can manipulate all sorts of events, and having widespread sports betting, which is allowing them to monetize that, creates some incentives which are not good for the long run health of sports. If you think that the big game that you went to play is fixed because one of the players had a big bet on how many yards he would gain in a game, or how many times he fumbled, or something like that, it begins to question the very legitimacy of sports. And those incentives are now thousands of times greater than they were when you could only get a bet down on a game in the bottom. And I don't think in states' rush to monetize and earn revenues off of taxes on sports betting, I don't think that they fully thought out all the implications of this legalized sports betting for sports and for what sports fandom means. And there's already tons of examples of sports bettors on social media attacking players because they didn't perform in the way that they thought they had a bet down on that game. It just blows that up. And I think that it still remains to be seen what that landscape's going to look like, but again, it's going to be different.
I think I agree with everything that Brett said. It is a risk, and something that I wish had happened, but it's there. My only wish now is that the revenues that the state earns from sports betting would go back to the students. And that's the question.
To that point, before you get there, a testament to the growth of where we are in sports betting. In the year 2015, Las Vegas was the only place that had sports betting that was legalized. And they had $1.4 billion bet in the entire year. The state of Tennessee online in November and December had $1.1 billion bet. It has become a mushroom cloud. And the safeguards, we've had a major league umpire fired because of his relation. We've had an NBA player banished for life and facing 20 years in prison. We have had a controversy with Shohei Ohtani and his interpreter that still is not completely copacetic, and he's the biggest star maybe globally in sports. All of this in the sports betting community. This is sports and economics. The next time they will have a sports betting thing, I hope I get to sit on the board. Because I got some stories, baby. I got some stories.
Thank you so much for that insight. The next question we have is kind of more Chattanooga-centric. So with teams like the Lookouts making heavy investment in trying to really establish themselves in Chattanooga, and on another team, the Chattanooga Football Club, they're beginning to build their headquarters in Chattanooga. How do you, and this may be more prevalent with Mr. Greasy because he lives in Chattanooga, but how do you see that that's going to affect Chattanooga's sports industry, and long-term, can they provide more competition by existing sports teams such as, the Chattanooga Athletics or the Red Wolves, and how do you just see that playing out with these teams making investments in Chattanooga?
Well, you mentioned my name, and I appreciate you doing with Mr. Greasy because that's the first time I've heard that in like 14 years. But I will say this, and they've got way more experience on this. Dave Flester's sitting in here, and he is a Chattanooga newspaper institution. He is maybe the smartest business mind in our area I know. But I have campaigned for a quarter century to build a youth sports complex that is AstroTurf, it could do lacrosse, it could do soccer, that could do multiple screens, and do fast pitch softball, and do baseball, and do whatever, because I am neck deep in youth sports, and maybe I am biased, but I can tell you, we spend a ton of money going everywhere, which tells me everybody else in the essence of sports and business spends a ton of money going everywhere else. That is more attractive to me. Don't get me wrong, I understand the reasons to build and keep the Lookouts. Building minor league baseball is not as financially beneficial as building a youth sports travel hub, in my opinion. I don't have anything to answer. Do I need to go to the bathroom now? 'Cause you guys are doing like this.
No. There's an element of this as we're talking that we haven't really discussed. And Dr. Kramer left out one thing in my bio, maybe because I was only doing it for a couple of years, but I used to be the Commissioner of Economic and Community Development. And my job was to recruit businesses to communities. And one of the things you find in that job is finding a community that has a large pool of talented, unemployed people doesn't exist. Wherever you go, the talented people are employed. If you're a business, you want to go to a place where you can attract people. And a part of having a city that's attractive is having what people sometimes refer to as public furniture. You have to have stadiums, activities, things for people to do. So there's another element to the economics of sport, that having entertainment that people will enjoy attracts businesses, people to your community. And that, I can't put a number on, but it's very important. So,
I actually have an economic take on this. There's an important force in urban economics called agglomeration. And it refers to the idea that we often see businesses in the same industry co-locate next to each other. I mean, the classic example of this is 75% of the production of carpet in the United States takes place within 20 miles of Dollar General. That's agglomeration, right? And those businesses, it's well established that businesses that agglomerate are more profitable and more successful. So it could be that agglomeration applies to minor league sports teams. And it could be having more minor league sports teams in an area could generate these agglomeration benefits that very well could benefit the local community. So,
Thank you so much for that insight. As we get closer to ending time, I was hoping to get some final thoughts from each of you just about the topic of sports economics as a whole and everything involved in that. So if we could start with Dr. Humphreys, just kind of your final thoughts, what you'd like us to take home and really take away from this event.
well, I mean, we've already had a little disagreement about this, but sports is a business and economic concepts can be applied to sports at many different levels, college, recreational, professional. I've done a lot of research on individuals' participation in physical activity, which is something that provides economic benefits because it has health benefits, as Randy will, I'm certain, attest to. So, but I think that sports, for economists, sports is just a great laboratory in which we can go and try to test our theories and understand if many of these economic models which guide our thinking really hold up, because we can measure so many interesting things in sports that we can't. You know, how do you figure out what the marginal productivity of a lawyer is? It's really hard, right? How do you figure out what the marginal productivity of a baseball player, a professional baseball player is? It's really easy, right? Because you observe their performance. And that's a really powerful laboratory for economists to apply our ideas.
Thank you so much for that. We'll move on to Mr. Greason's final thoughts, and then unless. Yeah, what would you like us to take home from this, Mr. Greason?
In truth, I have been in love with sports since I was an 8-year-old kid who thought the Dodger uniforms were great. These guys are smarter than me, but the fan in all of us should demand that we have better answers moving forward, because the questions are bigger than the games we love. And to that end, we do not know how it affects UTC or Auburn or UTC or The Ohio State at any level going forward. Now, yes, we often think, all right, sports is a sideline, it's an entertainment. It is what we are connected to, and it's just us. No, it's not just us. It's not just us. It's all of us. We may not all be connected to UTC or Alabama or it is a place that we have a better life. Truly. Sports is where I was talking to Dr. Humphreys a minute ago, and I'm going to let him drop some more science on you a minute ago, and I'm going to do the emotion. Sports is where, in a lot of ways, we got through the pandemic looking forward to sports. We got through childhood, through our favorite team. To that, we can't put a price on it, but they're trying to put a price on it. That's the importance of business and sports.
Thank you so much for that insight. say.
Well, I want to say three things as I listen to this conversation as a listener as well. I think one observation would be, don't generalize. I think that this conversation we've heard, pro sports are different, whether it's a minor league baseball team or an NFL team, they're all different. Sometimes people like to use these the comments that we're lumping everything together. As we've discovered, everything is different. So just don't generalize. The second thing is sports is growing. Whether it's athletics or professional, sports is growing in our country. We have more leisure time, and everybody in the sports business is growing. So it's going to be a bigger part of our economy. Third thing, it's going to continue to change. In collegiate sports, and college, in professional and minor league, it's going to continue to change. Just the last comment, as Ed, now putting my University of Tennessee president hat, in everything that we do around collegiate sports, I want to make sure that we put the students first. That's the most important. When we start the conversation, it's about what's the best interest of the students, and then work from there.
Thank you so much for that. From all of us in the audience, thank you so much, and go Moms.
That was fantastic. Thank you again to our panelists. And now I'm going to invite Kim Holder up, who has been instrumental in pulling this event off to help me get the raffle going. Okay, so we are giving away a game-worn jersey. All right. Over there in the corner. I'm going to reach in, grab our ticket. All right, ticket number 638112. Anybody? All right, going quick. 638111. Oh, you know, woo! All right, I'm going to go ahead. 638040. 638123. Anybody? 116. You're getting a football, but that determines if you decide to. All right, yay!